Hello and welcome to this episode of the Event Manager Podcast by Skift Meetings, the podcast for curious event professionals embracing the future of business events. My name is Miguel Neves and I'm the editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings. In this episode titled Exploring the Future of Association Events, I have the pleasure of speaking with Rob Eveleigh, the managing director of Bright Elm. Our conversation revolves around the specific needs of associations and association events. We talk about things like how working with associations is inspiring, particularly when they really contribute to the advancement of humanity. We talk about why taking time off and preserving our mental health is so important. We talk about why our job as event professionals is largely to take the stress out of events and travel. We talk about how associations are looking at different and more commercial business models, which has both advantages and disadvantages. And we talk about how event tech needs to be simple and reduce distractions to be effective. Hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out the other episodes of the podcast, which you can find on our website or by subscribing through your favorite podcast service. Hello and welcome to the Event Manager Podcast by Skift Meetings. My name is Miguel Neves. I'm the editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings, and I am joined today by Rob Eveleigh. Rob, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Miguel. Thanks for having me. Always lovely to catch up with you. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Excellent. So, Rob, we've known each other for too long, probably, right? I don't know, 12, 13 years.
No such thing as too long. It's quite a while. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. From sort of mainly from my time in the UK as well. But I'd love you to just take us through your journey into the event industry. How did that happen? And, how did you get to where you are today? You're the managing director of Bright Elm, a small company, but a very valiant and strong company working with associations. But I'd love you to tell that story. Like, how did you get here?
Okay. Yeah, I did. How did I get here? Let's go back many, many years. To when I was 16 and I had my first job was in a local hotel. And my love of events really started growing from there. I really enjoyed helping people find helping people enjoying their experiences. So I stayed with hotels for quite a few years.
So you understood how hotels run, but was this already kind of a career for you, or were you just sort of finding work and hotels seemed to be where you were working?
Well, it's quite interesting because when I was doing the event catering side with temporary staff, I started seeing this element of corporate events, which I hadn't experienced before. When that experience was amazing because we got to work at places like the Oval Cricket Ground. We worked at UEFA 90 something at Wembley. So we started looking at corporate hospitality. Also did a lot of big marquee events. And family fun days like at Althorpe Park in Northamptonshire and things like that. And I could really see a path myself in moving away from what I was doing, which is the catering side, into the event management side, which is what our clients were doing. So I knew I wanted to get there, but I wasn't quite sure how. And then I changed a bit. I had obviously a strong hotel background, so I decided to go and work in central reservations for a bit for Forte Hotels. That's original Forte Hotels, not RF Hotels as they are now. So I started doing some. I was a team manager in reservation centre then, so kind of understood about bedroom booking, things like that. When I started there, I was shown an induction video of the Café Royal. Café Royal was a large banqueting venue on Regent Street in London, and it's now a hotel. But when I started, I said, right, my ambition is that's going to be my next job. 2.5 years later, I started a job at the Café Royal as a sales exec in meetings and events. And then I worked with 2 other hotel groups in London, specialising in meetings, events, sales. Then I took a break from hospitality. I wanted to see what else was out there, so became a visiting tailor. That was an incredible learning experience. One piece of advice was given to me: choose your business partners more carefully than you might do your romantic partner. And two, make sure when you do start your business, you do something you love. Because in order to really succeed, and I've discovered in order to really succeed in having your own business, you need a passion. There needs to be a passion involved in it. And I learned so much. I think it was a very challenging time for me. I learned more by mistakes than success, I think. So I made the decision that I would move towards event management as a career. I didn't really think about having my own company back then. So in 2007, I started volunteering for various things, did a bit of freelance work. Then I went back to university at University of Westminster to study an MA in conference and event management, because I really felt that I wanted that strategic approach to meetings, events, and that level of study which would help me boost my career into the events industry. At the time, it was very rare to move. Most people in the events industry had always been in the events industry. In fact, I remember one recruitment professional, when I was still back in hotels, when I asked her about a move to event management from meetings, events, and hotels, she said, "It won't happen. It will never happen. You'll never do it." That kind of spurred me on more than anything else. And
that seems to be a bit of a theme with you, right? It's like,
yeah.
I think it's not possible.
Someone tells me you can't do it, so you go and do it. And in fact, I graduated from the same course you did a year after you. And I think actually that's where we first met on campus at University of Westminster, because Rob Davidson, who is like a celebrity within the meetings industry, I think, ran that course. I think doing that course just opened my eyes a bit into the reasons why people run events, the strategy behind events, which I think then helps me now when I think about when clients ask me to do things. It's yes, but what's the rationale behind that? How can I help it? With me thinking, how can I help the client deliver and make sure they get their objectives from it? I've never been a yes person. And for some people find that frustrating, I know. But I don't mind that. I can't please everybody, so that's okay. Then when I graduated, I did some more freelancing for a year, and then got a contract with 2012 Olympics to be on-site event manager for 3 months. It's probably the hardest job I'd ever done. 3 months with no day off, in
Ouch.
long hours. Yeah. It was tough. In hospitality, but involved, high volume things like high volume airport pickups and transfers, which I now know Heathrow like the back of my hand. It's I know more about Heathrow than many other people will ever get to know, and not all that is good. But that was an amazing experience. But also it was an amazing learning experience about what I can do if I really, really push myself. But also I got to go to the opening ceremony of the Olympics, which was just an incredible moment. And we do get nice perks in this job. We do get to do some amazing things. I've also, another project I did around them was I went to, I did a project for a corporate for a week in 2011 in London. And the client enjoyed working with me so much, I then got brought on as part of the team who were delivering a series of what they called the Global Marketing University. So then they took me to Peru, and I helped deliver them the Global Marketing University in Peru, which is where I got to swim in the Pacific for the first time and swim with seals.
That is a nice perk as well.
Yeah, absolutely. See, we did. So, like I said, we get some incredible. We have some incredible experiences. So then, just after I did the Olympics, the day after I finished on the Olympics, I had one day off, and I started a contract with TFI Group in London, who are now TFI Lodestar, working in their associations team. And it was only meant to be a 4-week contract. Help them deliver a congress in ICC Birmingham, and then when it finished, I asked if I could stay, and they said yes. which was wonderful. So I stayed. I became a permanent employee. And then I knew I had actually made that, I had successfully made that move, which I'd said all those years ago to that recruitment consultant I want to do. And she'd said, no, it won't happen. I did it.
And this was this the first time you really worked deeply with associations?
I've been working with associations on and off for that since 2007, doing various different things. That was the first time I was in a dedicated associations team.
And that is really a main focus of yours now, right? Like since then, would you say?
Yeah, well, it's pretty, I would say, yes, it is a focus. And really now in Brighton, it's the only thing we do. We only work with associations. When I left TFI, I went to work for American Express for a little for 18 months, which was seeing a different side of congresses, because we were working for a pharmaceutical client and we were their congress logistics team. So I spent, over the course of 18 months in total, I think I spent about 3 months in the States, mostly on 7 to 10 day stints, looking at really offering delegate support to a major pharmaceutical. So I got to see the Congress from the sponsor side, if you like, which is also eye-opening. So it's all been related to congresses and associations. I think when I left TFI and went to Amex, within a month of starting at American Express, I went, actually, no, I want my own business now. I know I can do this. And so that was my plan, and that's the goal I set myself, and did it.
Yeah. So
just like that.
But tell me about this focus on associations. Why? Is there a personal choice that you prefer the way associations run things? Is it a financial decision? Why this focus on associations?
I think because we're in some way we are contributing to the advancement of humanity. We are playing our part, and we get to help facilitate discussions and connections which otherwise wouldn't happen. And I've been talking about this recently quite a bit. Why do delegates attend events? We always used to think it's because of the content, and it is a lot to do with the content. But actually, the real value of attending is the connections you make, the discussions you have off the back of the content, and that's really what the value is for me. And I get to play a part in helping to facilitate that. Now, not all of our clients are working towards the greater advancement of mankind. Some are trade associations, and they're really focused on their business. But that's why I chose associations. In the most part, I'm not helping a corporate to make more money or to grow their profits. I'm actually doing something to help other people. And I think that's what appeals to me about it. And I think you raised a question about whether it was to do with money. It's not. It's certainly not. Working with associations is not as profitable as corporate agencies. So it's not really about money. It's about doing a good job in a right environment and helping people to have great outcomes.
Yeah, making a difference to some extent.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just a note on the Bristol kind of London thing is do you feel that hurts you in any way? Do you feel like more restricted to associations that have business in that area, or does it really not make that much difference and it's just a nicer place to live?
It makes no difference whatsoever.
Okay.
In fact, it's a positive difference. I think the we are cheap. It's actually a cheaper business to run in Bristol. Not a massive amount, because there's lots of people moving from London to Bristol now. So the cost of living in Bristol is actually going up. But Bristol's very accessible from London. And there's no. I think also what has helped is actually, weirdly, the pandemic. Lots of positives came out of the pandemic, not least that it's now acceptable to build relationships online. I think pre-pandemic, it would have been incredibly difficult to still build the relationships we have with even new clients without tools such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, because it's now socially acceptable in the business world to build relationships online like this, and it's fine. If I still had to be going up to London every week to see clients, I think it would be harder. A lot
it's
harder.
very taxing, right? If you're traveling all the time and you're always kind of on the road and always in London, really.
Yeah, exactly. And also, general communication with clients is much more online now. We don't. I guess pre-pandemic, there would have been a lot more travel costs for us in going to visit clients for meetings, that sort of thing. Again, most meetings take place online now, and although a lot of our clients are London-based, then very few are working in London. They're working all over the place.
Let's go have a meeting in your office. Well, actually, nobody's at the office. So when do you want to meet, or where do you want to meet? Right, is sort of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So I find I'm going to London probably once every 2 weeks for various different things. And sometimes it will be a whole week, because there was a week in June where the whole events industry and association industry just collided, and we had the meeting show, we had MemCom, and then we had the Conference News Awards, plus there was the Conference and Events Awards, and then the Mice Book Awards, and everything happened within 1 week. It was a little bit crazy, but so that's generally what I'm doing now.
Okay.
And it's working really well.
Good. You mentioned recently to me, and I hope you don't mind talking about this, that you were able to take 2 weeks off, and you didn't have to check in, or I don't know how much checking in you did, but you were able to take 2 weeks off, which I think for a small business owner is remarkable. And I kind of jokingly said you should do a session about that, but I wonder if you could share any advice, or how were you able to do that? Is that your management style, your team is great, a mix of all of the above? What do you think really enables you to be able to do that?
It is a mix of everything. My leadership style is very much to ensure the team are supported to be able to do their jobs. So I empower them to make decisions, to do what they need to do in order to be successful. But I am their number one support. Secondly, on top of that, I have chosen people in the business who are able to take that and run with it, and not fear making mistakes. In fact, I encourage people to make mistakes, not on purpose, obviously, but actually we make mistakes when we learn our best and our most from when we make mistakes.
But we don't learn if we don't make mistakes, right? Because if you just keep doing what you do.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, Tom, my partner, and I planned this 2 weeks away. It wasn't the first time I'd taken a break away from the office. I did it completely. I did it for a week on a canal boat in 2018. And I didn't take any phones with me the whole week. So as an emergency, the team had, I had 2 team members back then. They had Tom's mobile number in case they need to contact me in emergency. Didn't hear from them. When we were away in May, we didn't hear from the team at all. I didn't check my emails once. I had my laptop with me just in case, but it stayed in my suitcase.
Very nice.
And the only way I can do that is by empowering the team to run the business all the time, not just whilst I'm away. Their focus is they look after the sales and marketing. They write the proposals. They deliver the events, and I support them when I need to, when they need me to. And actually, in that time, they took a brief, they did a quote, and they won a piece of business whilst I was away. So my team are incredible. They're absolutely amazing. And they're great people to boot. So, but I think that's how it's empowerment, it's trust, and I am the only person who can allow myself to go away for those 2 weeks. So I made the decision that I was going to do it, and people say it's a brave decision, perhaps, but I think it was a sensible decision because it allowed me 2 weeks to just wind down. And by the beginning of the second week, I had wound down. I had stopped thinking about work. And I think as business owners, we have to take a responsibility for our own mental health as well by making sure we have clear, defined breaks. Because otherwise we just keep going and going and going before we know we burn out. And, I've verged on burnout before, and it's not fun. It's awful, and it takes much longer to recover from.
Yeah, good advice there. Thank you for sharing that, and I think it's super interesting. So tell me a little bit about your events and the way you build them, and I kind of wanted to frame this as going from good to great. You have a good event, one that goes fine. People show up on time, things work, etc. But what makes it a really great event? Are there kind of signature things that you can really elevate the event experience for your clients?
It's a very interesting question. It's quite hard for me to answer in a way because there are few events where we run the whole event. There are very few projects where we run the whole event. So our niche is that we will help associations where they need it. So that might mean we're working with an established events team where we are supporting them with the registration, or supporting them with abstract, or supporting them with speaker management, for example. But the difference between, in my opinion, the difference between good and great is when you focus on positive outcomes for your customers, your attendees. It's very easy, and I've seen it happen before. It's very easy to see attendees as a necessary evil, as part of what we do. But without them, we don't have a job. So it's in our best interest to try do what we can to you can't ensure, but to maximize their opportunity to have an amazing experience. That might be something as simple as double checking your badge print run to make sure that everyone has a badge, and simple things like that can really affect someone. And understanding that when an attendee visits a conference for the first time, they're generally quite stressed. Traveling to an event is quite a stressful experience. A lot of people don't realize it, but it's often stressful traveling. Traveling is generally stressful anyway. Most people have to travel to get to an event, whether that be to the airport. Airports are incredibly stressful environments. You're joining queue after queue after queue. You're worried that you've not done your pre-scanner check effectively enough, and the worst happens and the beep goes off. Then you have to get patted down, all that sort of thing. Then you're queuing. Then you're watching: is your flight going to be delayed or cancelled? Are you going to have to be rerouted? You get off flying at 30,000 feet is incredibly stressful on the body. And it's tiring, and it evaporates the moisture out of you. When you arrive, is your bag going to be there? Are you going to, for us now, when we're traveling to Europe from the UK, are they going to let us in? Because we're not part of the lovely EU anymore. And so by the time you get to the event, you can be incredibly stressed. So I think it's so important for us to keep attendees at the heart of what we do, and make have have their satisfaction and their outcomes first and foremost in our minds. And that's why whenever we start working with a client, even if we are just doing registration or badging, it's so important for us to know what the clients want the attendees to get out of it, because we can make even small subtle changes to how we build a registration system or how we build a registration workflow can make the difference between a frustrating process and one which is fluid and really helps the attendees out. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting that you talk about the stress of travel. I think a lot of times, if you're a frequent traveler or a frequent attendee of events, you kind of forget how stressful it can be, and how having, the right information at the right time and clear communication is so important, and kind of makes people feel confident when they show up. And that's important. If you have confident, happy attendees, you are laying the kind of the path for a successful event, right? And ultimately for doing those things that you want them to do to kind of make a difference, especially in associations and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting, we spoke earlier about when we moved back to Bristol. One negative consequence of when we moved back to Bristol is now that pretty much any flight I take, it has two legs. So then I have the stress of a transfer in an airport, typically Amsterdam or Frankfurt. And that's also another stressful part. So I've inadvertently added to my own stress when traveling.
But I am the same here now with living remotely in Denmark. It's the same. So it's always an extra leg. So I know you've done some work in sort of envisioning the future of associations, what they're going to look like in the future, and also the future of association events. Wonder if you could give us a little bit of a preview or a little bit of a summary of what you found and what is probably more surprising out of that.
Okay. I think the research I did was around future trends that might affect association events. But I think your first point was very, very interesting, because a law firm did a study in connection to the ESAE. It was connected to the ESAE.
What is ESAE for those who are not familiar with it?
ESAE, sorry, European Society of Association Executives. It's a kind of cousin to the ASA, American Society of Association Executives. And it was about the future of associations, and actually is the voluntary method is a method of engaging volunteers to run associations the correct way to go. Because actually often a volunteer board can really hold back the progress of associations, should associations be in fact corporate bodies, because it will allow them to adapt to commercially much quicker. And there's a whole question over the future model of associations, and if that is the way forward, where's the governance? Fascinating. But sticking with the events, I looked at, so what I realized was that there was a lot of study in the events industry of the future of events, but we tended to ask event managers about the future of events. And it's a bit like the tail wagging the dog. Actually, what we probably need to do is some external looking to see what's happening in the rest of the world that might influence what we're doing. So, for example, I looked at business travel, and there's lots of conflicting research and all the elements I looked at. But business travel, a lot of people now don't want to travel for business. They like staying home. A lot of people enjoyed their pandemic time where they were at home with their families. They didn't have to travel. They didn't have to go. Now, I think we're in a bit of a live bubble at the moment. We've been through a virtual bubble. We're now in a live bubble where people are coming back together again. It will settle. I predict, and it's recorded now, and you can come back to me in the future and say, you predicted this, that it didn't work out. But I predict that it will balance somewhere in the middle, still with virtual and live attendance. But the business travel industry is predicting a continued rise back to pre-pandemic levels.
Well, at least all the airlines that are hoping for it, right? And they're the ones that are kind of pushing
exactly.
that.
But actually, if you look at what consumers want, they don't want to travel so much. And the vast majority of business travel is to attend meetings. That's why people go, whether that be a meeting for 6 people between 2 law firms discussing a merger in New York, or whether that's attending a conference. The vast majority of business travel is for meetings. People don't want to travel so much, and they can meet effectively online like this. How does that support the future of business travel? And then when you mix in sustainability, the importance of sustainability, that is as well. If people are going to travel for work, they're going to really choose the times they go in order to minimize their carbon footprint and get the best experiences possible. So I think, looking at the trends that I've seen, people will attend less meetings in person. They will still attend the meetings they want to attend, but some of that attendance will be virtually, which means that actually every single meeting stakeholder, event and conference stakeholder now needs to work harder to ensure that what they're delivering in terms of experience is superior to their competitors. I believe a lot of associations still don't realize that their events are in a competitive marketplace. There's an association, there's probably a magazine or publishing company or commercial conference company that are running a very similar event, and they may be doing it a lot better. They're in whether they're a charity or an association, or they're still in a competitive marketplace. I also looked at the future of tech. Go on, you can ask me something.
I was just going to relate that back to the point about being more of a commercial enterprise and how that is quite interesting, because I feel like there's a little bit of navel gazing or something like that, where associations feel like they're unique, or they're the only Royal Society or whatever it is, and then they see a publication do an event that's in the same field, and they're very dismissive of it, and they say, "Oh no, they're just this publication, like it'll never compete with us." But I think from the attendee perspective, that's not necessarily the case. An attendee goes, "That's an interesting event. That's an old-fashioned event. Maybe I'll go to the new, interesting, shiny event." And then the association is left a little bit wondering what's happening. Is this kind of what you mentioned it being very interesting to go more towards a commercial angle? Is that sort of the direction that you see these things going? And I'm not trying necessarily pin all associations as arrogant or anything like that, but I think this kind of thing might happen on occasion, right?
I think it's very important for any association to have a commercial perspective on their event. Now, the fundamental reason for the event conference taking place, is to bring people together, to share best practice, and to learn from each other and network. That's not going to go away. But what has to change is that the same conference which has been run for the last 20 years will not survive if it continues to be run in the same way for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's because there will be competitors. And it's also because our learning styles are very different now. One of the other fascinating pieces of information I found was that our collective attention spans are reducing. Mm-hmm. So if our collective attention spans are reducing, can we still sit in a room for 2 hours with us in a symposia and take in as much as we used to be able to? We can't. Now, people will say, well, that's the way we've always done it, and people still sit there and listen to it. Yes, they listen to it, but actually, how much of that is active listening versus passive listening?
Yeah, and I always find if you stand at the back of the room, at least half of the audience are on their phones. Unless nowadays, unless you have some amazing speaker delivering a very an outstanding presentation, the faces, people's faces are lit up with the light from their mobile phones.
Yeah. So if the value, if the value of attending an event is the discussions you have around the content, about the people you meet, and the main content itself. Well, what's that say about how we deliver the content? Should, for one example of something I've seen, I've not been involved in, is that the majority of content was delivered online in advance of an event, and then the end of the event is where people come together to discuss it. That's fascinating. The other thing is something I'm working on something I'm working on at the moment with one of the events industry trade shows, is the format of the discussions when you bring people together. So we're discussing the challenges that associations have vary significantly. Actually, why don't we create a session where the association, this isn't new, this isn't a new idea, but create a session where, rather than come in and listen to panelists discussing their experiences, actually bring small groups of people together to choose the topics on the day, have a leader who can then facilitate discussion around those topics. Because when you are a group of 200 and you're listening to a panel of 4, you're still that panel of 4 have still got a narrow range of experiences. Actually, if you put yourself on a table of 10, and then you've got 10 experiences of the same topic, and it's things like that which can be applied, which means you're not sitting there listening to that one to many single flow.
I guess the ultimate model there is the unconference, right, where you go for the complete crowdsourcing of the content. But so my feeling is that we stick to keynote, coffee break, breakouts, formats, because we're afraid to take risks, and because in terms of marketing, that makes sense to us. You market the keynote, you market the big opening. Do you feel the same way, that's why I would say the majority of events still follow relatively traditional formats?
When we sit on boards, we become representatives of the membership. Our job is to ensure the future success of the association. As such, unless we are, as board members, facilitated very well, there's a significant danger, and I've seen it on the boards which I've sat on, that everyone becomes so risk averse that nothing ever happens, and nothing ever changes.
Right? It's just
and that's the advantage that the commercial sector has on association sector, is it doesn't have that break. Or it doesn't. That's not true. It doesn't have that much as much of a break. It will have a break in that the conference director will be deciding the program, will be deciding what's important. There will be a director above them going, okay, but is it still profitable? Because that's what they're focused on. It's
about skin in the game, isn't it? I think when it's commercially driven, you're everybody's got a bit of skin in the game, and you have to make those choices and make those decisions.
So there's when you apply that risk aversion, there's a danger that everything just stops, innovation stops. And to your point about marketing, I don't agree that a keynote is a draw for a conference, because most keynotes aren't that great. There's a few really, really good ones, but they're often they're often someone who is known to a member of the board who's got, they'd be great, or they have a good experience being a keynote. The only thing as a keynote, I don't necessarily think that a keynote makes a good keynote. That might sound odd, but actually someone who's experienced at drawing a crowd doesn't necessarily mean they are a good speaker and that they are engaging. Again, I come back to this idea of what's important to the attendees, not important to the board. And that level of insight is what is most important, keeping the needs of the attendee at heart.
Yeah. What about the celebrity keynotes? And I mean, we've both seen examples. I think Confex has done this a number of times, where they'll take some kind of TV personality and kind of put them on a stage at an industry trade show, and it does draw a big crowd. Do you think that works? Is that something that you ever do or see with the association clients that you work with?
I think I'm a little what's the word? Let's use the word doubtful, because I can't think. I'm thinking of another one. Do people go? I'm not going to name any trade shows here.
I'll beep that out, shall I?
Do visitors go to a trade show to see a celebrity speaker, or do they go to a trade show because they want to go to the trade show? And I'm a firm believer that it's the latter rather than the former, because actually, what has Seb Coe got? Let's use Seb Coe as an example, because I know he's been a speaker. What has he got that will benefit? What does he have that will benefit the events in industry to make him a draw for people to attend? Skeptical. That's the word I was looking for.
Skeptical.
If we really thought about it, isn't the main reason why people attend these events is to meet with suppliers? I mean, trade shows is another whole topic, another whole couple of hours conversation. Because what's the purpose of a trade show? It's to meet with new suppliers. Well, hang on a minute. The internet can do that. So what is it about a trade show, or what should a trade show be in order to make people want to go? If that's your business. And I'm going to be very critical of the trade show industry in the UK now, and say that actually they're not. I think without exception, no one is really pushing the boundaries of trade in the events industry. No one is really out there going, okay, I get it. This is what you need. You need to meet people. You need to network. It's still all about shell scheme and stands. That's the fundamental purpose. And I think there are some very good things about the trade shows in the UK. But if it's still fundamentally based on that, but the events industry has moved on, but the trade show haven't. So I find that very challenging, and it's I think across the world, trade shows have an opportunity to modernize and come up with a new model of working, but they have to be brave in order to do it.
Yeah. No, I've seen some interesting examples of sort of the festivalization of trade shows, and and I think it's not just about going to a trade show and it feeling like the festival. It's when people start talking about going to a festival and not going to a trade show, but there is businesses there. I think then you've really kind of made that transition. Well, it's nice to have some like food trucks inside a trade show hall or something like that, but that's not going to make it into a festival, right? That's just going to make the food options a little bit quirkier.
Yeah, I mean, I think some examples are, pitching. So actually having a pitching stage, giving lots of ideas away free now. Actually where you've got new people coming in, new suppliers coming saying, "Hi, I'm new. This is my business. This is my idea," and actually publishing that in a program, because people will go. But event buyers, event stakeholders, they need new original ideas in order to either implement or sell to their clients. But again, I think perhaps this is a problem the other way around, where associations may do well at, is they don't need to make money out of it. The problem with commercial companies and that sort of scenario is that they need to make money out of it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the new businesses and startups, they don't have massive amount of marketing spend, but it's such an opportunity.
Yeah, very interesting challenges. So want to get to one last kind of area, which is technology. You mentioned that you work with technology. How do you see the future of sort of events technology? And I guess maybe kind of like in the short term and in the long term future.
Okay, short term. Very interesting. There's been a couple of Julius Cyrus has made a couple of posts recently on current things going on in event tech, I do see a lot of event tech companies who have kind of evolved a lot or grown substantially over the last couple of years now really struggling because they grew in an unsustainable way. And I think the next couple of years will start to prune some of the tech which perhaps wasn't solutions focused and was a bit gimmicky. I would very much like to see event tech companies more focused on events, on event solutions, and actually having the delegate at the heart of what they do, as opposed to and the planner at the heart of what they do, rather than just producing a nice looking something or other. Most event tech demos are based around attendee experience. But actually most of them forget about the planner experience. And the planner, if you don't have event tech that can complement your existing workflows in your business, your organization, that's a real struggle.
Give me a bit of an example or a few examples. What are your bugbears? Is it that they focus too much on like the video production side, and then managing how people are on the platform is challenging, or there's not a lot of options? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
There's sort of from both perspectives. What's again putting attendees at the heart of what we do? What's the most important thing for attendees? It's to be able to get on a platform quickly without having to click too many buttons and get into your session. Mm-hmm. I know there are still platforms, and we work with some of them, where the access, the time it takes to access the content is upwards of 2 minutes. When you're logging in at the time of the session, and then you miss the first 2 minutes because you need to go through a number of checks or accessibility and etc. That's challenging. So much event tech is too distracting. You can do this, you can do that, you can do this, you can do that. Oh, fantastic. Actually, most attendees just want to get on the platform, see a session, ask a couple of questions and leave. That is what most of them want to do. And it's amazing how many barriers they have to doing that in some instances.
And is that the issue, that then you can't switch everything else off, or it's hard to kind of
sometimes it's really difficult to manage those distractions. I would like to see, I'm not sure we are going to see, but I would like to see specialisms. I would like to see companies developing software, one part of their software to a very high standard, and not trying to diversify too much. So recently, one of the UK, mostly UK-based tech providers, I was having a conversation with the MD. He was saying, "Oh yes, I'm going to develop an abstract submission process next." And I said, "Well, why do you want to do that?" He said, "Well, because customers need it." And I said, "No, they don't. They don't need another abstract submission portal. There's loads of abstract submission software." And I said to him, which is going to be far superior to anything you will develop, because you don't have a content specialist in your team. Actually, what we do need is really good integration. Mm-hmm. We need preferably open APIs, but open APIs that actually work properly, where we can bring the best of the best together to produce outcomes and event tech which will help attendees achieve what they need to achieve. And it seems to be a really big challenge for some of these companies, and I know they don't want to share. That's mm-hmm. the thing. They want their customers to be their customers and to do everything, but you can't be good at everything. So be good at something, be really good at something, even if that's just one thing, and build your client base based on that one thing. If you don't, if other customers will come and say to you, "Oh, can you also do this? Can you also do that? Can you also do this?" And maybe some of that stuff is easy for you, which you can adapt to. Some of it will be off the wall. And the danger is, if it's a business, you follow the whim of your customer, you'll end up being good at nothing for anyone. So I think exactly. So I would hope to see over the next couple of years some reduction in the number of event tech providers, some innovations, but I hope a lot of open APIs that will allow us as the main users to bring the best of the best together to create the events which we need.
Yeah. And what about the long term? Are there any kind of different views that you have for what's needed, or how events and associations are going to have, that relationship with technology?
Nothing more than I've said. I think this idea of allowing collaboration with your competitors. That's a very hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Very, very hard. But I can't see it evolving any other way. And I think just continuing to provide accessible solutions to content. I think the biggest challenge on online content actually is probably places that don't have very good internet. There are huge swathes of Africa and India, Southeast Asia that still are challenged in accessibility to good tech infrastructure. That's both from an internet connectivity perspective and also hardware too. And so continuing to develop solutions which require less and less bandwidth will be important, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely very interesting for the more international events and associations. Rob, absolute pleasure. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to ask you the last question, which is the one we ask at the end of our podcast to all our guests, and it may be a bit of a surprise, but I'd like you to recommend someone else who should be on the podcast. Another podcast guest can be absolutely anybody inside or outside the event industry, as long as you feel that it's someone who the listeners, who are planners, event professionals, etc., would be interested in hearing from, and maybe having a different view on something.
Wow, God, that's a hard one. My first thought would be Sam Allen, but you may have spoken to Sam already.
We had Sam on the show, yes.
Okay.
Anybody new that's come into your world that you think would be a different voice or something interesting for our listeners?
I think it would be very interesting, if you haven't already, to speak to Matt. I forgot his surname, the new CEO of Eveleigh.
Matthew Donegan-Ryan.
Yes, that's it. I met him at IMEX. Very interesting chat with a very interesting background. And I think understanding more about the challenges that event tech faces, because there were quite a few questions at the end. I think that would be an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
I'd probably go with someone like Martin Cirk. I met Martin recently, actually, talking about, and he's now, his consultancy is looking at association hubs, and I think that's fascinating. Looking at the where associations are based and how I think that would give a very good interesting insight about the future of associations. Yes, those are the ones I would suggest.
Excellent recommendations. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Rob, once again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for chatting with us today. And to everybody listening, I hope you found that interesting. Where can people reach you if they want to connect with you or your website or anything like that?
The website is brighthelm.co.uk. Look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm more than happy to connect anyone in the industry. And I love chewing the cud. I really enjoy helping people solve problems. So if you have a problem, come to me. I'm happy to discuss it with you. It doesn't always have to cost money either.
Excellent. Be careful what you promise. Thanks, Rob. It's been a pleasure.